Well, good morning, everybody. And good morning to everybody who's joining us online. I'm Maria Edgeworth. I'm Director of the Center of Digital Humanities Research here at Texas A&M. And it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Tarpley for his talk this morning on Corpora, a dataset studio for the digital humanities. Brian is an associate research scientist and lead developer with Coder. He has an undergraduate degree in computer science and a master's and PhD in English. And he finished that graduate career here at Texas A&M. And while still a graduate student, he started working at Coder, and that evolved into the role that he has now. Brian is going to talk to you about Corpora, which is a very robust software and project platform that he has developed. He's presented on Corpora at the most recent Digital Humanities Conference. He has it under review at Reviews in Digital Humanities. I always forget the name of that journal. Pardon me, it's early and I'm a tired woman today. And many of our largest projects use Corpora. So on that note, I'm going to let Brian take over.
Thank you, Maura. Yeah, so I'm both shocked and grateful to see so many of you here bright and early on a Saturday morning to hear me talk about Corpora, which is a digital tool I've been working on for about 8 years now. Let's see. So Corpora is free open source digital humanities infrastructure. Okay, it's intended to be run by academic centers, libraries, or projects teams, right? And its purpose is to greatly accelerate the development of DH projects by serving as a database, a REST API, a data collection / curation / visualization interface, and a Python-powered asynchronous task queue all wrapped into one. Now, if there's a lot of technical gobbledygook in that slide that you're not really interested in, I'm going to do my best today to sort of ground some of these terms in what it actually does for a couple of our projects. Speaking of technical gobbledygook, there's a lot of that on this slide as well. And I don't think there's enough coffee in this room to keep you awake as I kind of talk through all of this functionality. So I'm not going to do that, but if there are any technically oriented folks in the crowd or on Zoom or whatever, and you want me to return to this slide and talk about any one kind of functionality, I'm happy to do that. Also happy to provide a demo of anything there with time permitting. Over the course of my time in DH, I've had the privilege of working on a lot of projects in one capacity or another. And here are some that are served in some fashion or another by Corpora. Today, I'll be talking about Corpora in relation to 2 of these projects. This will come as a big surprise. I'll be talking about the Maria Edgeworth Letters Project, or MELP, and the Carlyle Letters Online, or the CLO. It's been wonderful to finally meet in person so many of the kind of MELP team members over the course of this symposium. It is equally wonderful to have finally met Brent. I've spent many hours with all of you on Zoom, and I can say it's been an absolute delight working on your projects. So thank you. In the case of both MELP and the CLO, all scholarly production in terms of the edited letters themselves, the expertly attributed named entities like people, places, and things, and any editorial annotations live in TEI encoded XML files that in turn live in version Git repositories. What this means is that if the front-end interface for these websites disappeared, or if Corpora went the way of the dodo, not a single iota of labor that went into transcribing, editing, annotating, and cataloging these letters would be lost. This is a wonderful place for a DH project to be in, and it is something I think that should be modeled, especially with kind of larger projects at scale. Having established that the scholarly production for these sites lives in TEI encoded XML, it's important to draw a distinction between that data and the data that's actually required to provide the functionality of their respective websites. While much of the encoding practices of the CLO and MELP overlap, their projects evolved along different trajectories and foreground different affordances of their data. We'll get back to talking about those differences in their data ontologies in a minute. But for now, I want to focus on how these projects are alike in terms of the way they're served by Corpora. One cool thing about Corpora is that it allows you to have multiple disparate databases on the same instance. We refer to each database in Corpora as a corpus, hence the name Corpora, plural for corpus. Each corpus in Corpora, however, is more than just a database. For instance, you can easily associate a Git repository with a corpus, like the ones that house the TEI encoded letters for both of these projects. When you do this, it clones the contents of that Git repository into the corpus's file structure. A corpus in Corpora is also a living thing in that you can program it to perform certain tasks. In the case of both the CLO and MELP, there is a task that pulls down the latest commits to that TEI repository, blows away all the existing data in the corpus, right? And then recreates all of the data based solely off of what it finds in those repositories. This means that at any given point, for instance, Brent can make some changes to the TEI encoded letters in his repository, and when he's ready, he can log into Corpora, click a button, and have it completely refresh all the data, now including those changes he just made. This empowers a project team, giving them complete control over the publication process of their data. Another cool thing about that Corpora does is it creates a REST API for every corpus based on that corpus's idiosyncratic data schema. This means that third-party tools like WordPress or any web-based front end can query the data living in a corpus and present it to the user on a public-facing website. By using WordPress in this way, the MELP team, for instance, can log into WordPress, change the verbiage of their about pages, post news updates, or do anything else you can do with a content management system without worrying about compromising the integrity of their scholarly data. If their WordPress site gets hacked, or if it breaks due to an incompatible plugin or whatever, their data remains ensconced within the safety of their repository. So why this complicated stack, right? Like, why not just create a static website or have WordPress somehow directly query the Git repository to display these letters? Well, for a lot of projects, particularly smaller projects that don't need to foreground things like advanced search or whatever, that's actually a recommended route to go. Because honestly, the simpler your stack, the more resistant it's going to be to changes in technology over time. So if you want to build a DH project that lasts, and you know you don't have institutional support, you don't have people like me who are going to be able to, maintain a tool like Corpora over time, that is the way to go. Okay? But in terms of why we're not doing that with the MELP or the CLO, the answer has to do with both scale and functionality. Corpora's REST API is powered by a Lucene search engine, which means you can full text search, filter, sort, and aggregate by any data point in your corpus, allowing sites like the CLO and MELP to provide robust advanced search features and finding aids to their users without having to worry about the scale of their data set. Corpora can readily handle millions of entries. Now, I mentioned earlier that MELP and CLO evolved along different trajectories and foreground different affordances of their data, and I promised to talk about those differences. The vast majority of the letters comprising the CLO, for instance, were first published as a series of print volumes. And as you see here, the CLO website organizes itself around these volumes, leveraging the thought and decision-making that went into originally grouping these letters in print. The volumes themselves are also grouped together into something like distinct eras in the lives and work of the Carlyles. The website refers to the grouping of volumes 1 through 12, for instance, as, quote, the Carlyles in Scotland and in London. And below the volume listings and their date ranges, you'll find a list of people, events, publications, or themes that are touched on by the letters in this volume grouping. You can see then why the CLO needs to keep track of things like letter volumes and volume batches, which is what I call those groupings of volumes, as well as other phenomena related to the print volumes, such as paratextual front matters and photos. Now, in the CLO, right, some of these photos were actually kind of with the printed volumes, and they kind of come embedded in the letters themselves. But the CLO also has photo albums that were digitized that basically are historical artifacts that belong to the Carlyles. So we also have things like photo albums there. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Taking a look at MELP's functional data ontology, you'll see it's only comprised of letters and entities, which may seem deceptively simple at first, until you take a look at the number of entities in their data set proportional to the number of letters that they've encoded and edited so far. Why is it that the number of letters in the CLO dwarfs the number of letters in MELP, while the number of interlocutors, which is similar in some way to entities, right, in the CLO is nearly the same as the number of entities in MELP? The specific answer to that question is that in terms of named entities, the CLO currently only encodes its letters for the sender and recipient of a given letter, whereas MELP encodes every person, place, and published work present throughout each of their letters, assigning them unique IDs and providing authoritative URIs for them whenever possible, as you can see here. So that's the specific reason behind these different data ontologies. More generally, however, the reason these two TEI-encoded letters projects have such different ontologies is because, as I've observed in my decade of experience as a full-stack developer in this field, no two DH projects are alike. If we're to imagine any kind of shared infrastructure for DH, that infrastructure must be able to account for the idiosyncrasies inherent in DH projects. I have also observed in my tenure as a developer in DH that no active DH project is ever finished. That doesn't mean that we can't end projects. That's not what I'm saying. There are ways to gracefully end a project. But no active DH project is ever finished. Any shared DH infrastructure must provide affordances for projects to iterate and grow in arbitrary directions. It is in fact in response to the idiosyncratic and ever-evolving nature of DH projects and the fact that our DH center has historically only ever employed one full-time developer that I have spent nearly the past decade building Corpora. My goal is to empower people like me to be able to drastically reduce the time it takes to both create and iterate on large-scale digital humanities projects. So, to demonstrate how Corpora makes my job easier in trying to support idiosyncratic DH projects that evolve in arbitrary directions, I'm going to go against any sound advice and provide a live demo. The hypothetical situation here is that the MELT team approaches me and says that, yes, we are extracting the names of the transcribers from every one of their TEI encoded letters, and we're storing them in a text field related to each letter. But what we really want to do is to create a separate content type called transcriber that we can store information about each of these transcribers in, so that we can very easily visualize every letter that each transcriber has worked on, and in turn visualize all of this labor, right, that they're doing. So that's what they hypothetically come to me to request. Now I'm going to try and I think I have enough time here. I'm going to try and actually just do it the way that I would, like, if somebody walked into my office and said, hey, make this happen. I'm going to show you exactly what I would do using Corpora. If I get really nervous and like I forget and stuff, I've already written some code that I can like quickly copy and paste. So we'll see how it goes. If we can verify that Zoom folks can still see this window, I might have to reshare.
Yeah, I think you might have to share. Oh, you can still see. Oh, wait. Yeah.
You can still see the full.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so this is going to drive me crazy. Let's see if there's a way I can move this. All right, well, let's be very careful where I click with the mouse. Okay, and I'm actually going to have a seat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is log into the dev instance of Corpora that we have running on our campus. I'm going to use the dev instance because I don't want to catastrophically damage the live instance of the MELT project as it's being served to the public right now. Okay, and as you can see, any one single instance of Corpora can house, a good number of databases, okay? And this is running on a modest virtual machine housed in the kind of College of Arts and Sciences. All right, so this can be deployed in the cloud. If you are at your home institution and they can make virtual machines, you can set up an instance of Corpora. Okay, so I'm going to open the MELT corpus, and we're going to see indeed that their corpus is comprised of these two, what we call content types. If you're thinking of like conventional database parlance, right, a content type is akin, right, to a table. Okay, so we've got these two things here, and again, what they're wanting is a third content type called transcriber. So let's go ahead and make that really quickly. I'm just going to go to the admin tab of their corpus. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click new content type. We're going to call it transcriber. I also want to give it a plural name because you can't always just add an S to the end of a word and expect that to be the plural name. Okay, so we've got a new table essentially. We need to give it columns, or in the parlance of Corpora, we need to give this content type a field. So I'm just going to make a very generic sounding field called name, where we're going to track the name of the transcriber. I want to note the different data types that are available in terms of like creating your content in Corpora. A lot of these are very basic fields that you would find in almost any kind of database. What makes Corpora a little bit different, though, is that there are data types in here that are specifically engineered to support the digital humanities. There are, for instance, things like a time span, which allows you to say, not just from this date to this date, but like, I'm not sure when this artifact was made. It was made sometime in the 1400s. So you can specify the start of that century, the end of that century, and check a box that says uncertain for every field, you know, that like that. Okay. There's also a IIIF image URL. So if you're in the techie world of DH, the word III or the acronym IIIF probably means something to you. Basically just a way, a lot of like institutions in the GLAM sector. So, you know, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums use IIIF to serve high definition images to people in a way that is kind of scalable for the internet, all right? There's also geospatial points. So if you need to locate something spatially using a coordinate system, you can use that. You can upload files. You can have a Git repository associated with something as a field. But for now, all we're doing is keep track of the name. So I'm just going to choose text. All right. So we've made our transcriber. I'm going to click Save Changes. Great. Now, instead of just entities and letters, we also have something called transcribers. So one cool thing about Corpora is if I wanted to manually create all of these transcribers, right, I could actually just click the Create button. It makes a dynamically generated web form that I can then go in and just start entering data if I want to. So if you have kind of a project team full of people who are collecting and curating data, and you want them to manually enter data into a web page like this, Corpora can facilitate that. I'm not going to sit here and type a whole bunch of names today, but you could do it that way if you want to. In order to make this kind of meaningful as a content type, I want to be able to also associate it with individual letters. So what I'm going to do is go back here into the admin tab. I'm going to expand out letter. And now you can see all the specific fields that Melt uses in order to track letters. Now, again, we cannot reduce all the editorial work that goes into TEI encoding their letters to these fields. All right, this is a reduction. Right, their TEI is a lot more rich and robust than what can be represented here. And so again, I need to draw that distinction between the data that lives in their TEI and then just the functional data that we need to make their website run. Those are two different things. All right, so I'm going to add a new field here. We already have a field called transcriber, and again, it just stores text. So I'm going to call this transcriber object, which is a horrible name for a field, but for the sake of time, that's what we're going to go with. And I'm going to choose this last data type, which allows me to store as the value of a field another instance of content in the kind of data ontology. So I'm going to choose transcriber as the type of field that this is. And I'm going to click Create. Okay. Go ahead and save that change. Anytime you do change the data schema in Corpora, it blows away the leucine index and recreates it, right? So because there's not a lot of data here in the MELT corpus, that was almost instantaneous. If you have millions of records and you change the data schema in Corpora, it might take hours to kind of re-index, but thankfully we don't have that problem here. All right, now if I scroll over, I can see that we have this new column in letters called transcriber object that I just created. And the value for this field is always going to refer to one of these transcribers. All right. So again, some MELT team member walked into my office and says, I need this done now. So what do? They would never do that. They're very polite. I'm going to click on the admin tab. And I need to get this done in a hurry using just a quick bit of Python code. All right. Every corpus in Corpora comes with its own IPython notebook. So if I click launch notebook, right, the server fires up an IPython notebook instance specific to this corpus and allows me to open it here. Right. Now, this is not functionality that you would give to a graduate student. Okay. This is something that you would want like a developer to be able to do, okay, because you're in effect giving power over the data structure of an entire corpus to somebody who's writing arbitrary Python code. Okay, so with great power comes great responsibility, etc. So I'm going to run this first cell, which sets everything up for me. And here are just a couple of little scripts that I've run in the past just to do some data cleanup or something for MELT. Here I'm going to go ahead and perform this task. And just to kind of make things quicker, I'm just going to copy something I've already done, paste that in here. Except instead of works, I'm actually interested in getting every letter. So, oops, the content type, this is a Windows keyboard. And I'm not interested in filtering that. I want all of the letters in the corpus. So, okay. All right. I can already like feel like the eyes glazing over. Like again, there's not enough coffee in the world. So just to speed this up, honestly, I'm going to go in here and copy and paste. And if people have questions about what this code is actually doing, I'm happy to address that in the Q&A. But to be clear, this is 10 lines of code that would take me probably as many minutes to write. Okay, and all it's doing is going through all the letters, grabbing the text of a given transcriber's name, checking to see if we have any of those new transcriber content types that I just created that correspond with that name, and if not, it creates one, associates it with the letter Bob's your uncle. So let's run that. Should just take a matter of seconds. It should just take a matter of seconds. Okay, and we're done. All right, so hopefully this share screen thing will go away. Yeah. Now, when I refresh this view, we'll see some things. One, we now have a total of 14 unique transcribers. Now, I say unique. There may need to be some data cleanup here because it looks like this person and this person are probably the same. Corpora has affordances for that. If you wanted to, we could check both of these boxes and we could merge those entries if we wanted to. We can also open. Oh, I forgot to set the label. Dang it. So let me do that really quickly. That was a horrible, I don't know if you noticed, but when I clicked on Alex Legrand's entry here, it gave this awful like label here at the top. And that's not friendly for anybody. So I'm going to go in here under transcriber. I'm going to edit the template that's used for creating labels. This is just a Jinja 2 template kind of convention. I call this name instead of ID. Click save. Hopefully that will trick. just in case, I'm gonna just quickly re-index all the letters. Okay. Neat. So make sure that that actually took. Okay, indeed. Now the labels for all of these transcribers are a lot more friendly. Okay, so let's go back and let's see if that took. Yay! Okay, we have a better label there for our piece of data. Okay, neat. Alex now has a page, right? But what if we want to actually visualize the things that Alex has accomplished? I'm going to go ahead and click the Explore tab. Okay. Again, I guess that label did not take. This is driving me crazy, so I'm just instead of just re-index, I'm going to force it to relabel everything. Sorry about that. That should also just take a couple of seconds.
It's very realistic.
Yes, thank you for your patience. All right, going back, Alex. There we go.
Wow.
All right, it's still like, I guess, didn't quite finish relabeling on the network graph side of things. That's okay. If you click on this, it shows you, the content. But this is it only pulled in 5 of the letters that Alex transcribed, because currently this visualization is set to only bring in 5 related things at any given time. So I'm going to bump that up to 80. I'm going to click on Alex here, and I'm going to scroll out and pull in more of these letters.
That's a lot.
Good job, Alex.
Alex has apparently transcribed 80 different letters. Okay, that's one sort of metric that we can sort of use in terms of visualizing the amount of labor that Alex has performed. But perhaps even more helpful would be to have some semblance of actually how many entities Alex took the time to tag in each of these 85 different letters. So let's go ahead and pull all of that in.
I'll take my bow now.
Thank you. Take a
Look at that.
screenshot as well.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's impressive. Wow.
Oh my God. I have no idea. Well, we knew it
Um,
was awesome.
So what this network graph tells us is that Alex has been very busy. One thing that I've tried to put some work into with Corpora is ensuring that these hairballs sort of eventually try to kind of detangle themselves. So what's happening is every type of node on this graph is subject to a wind that is blowing it in one cardinal direction or another. And so it starts to kind of look like, like dandelion seeds blowing in the wind or something. And eventually that might sort of detangle and make itself a little bit more attractive. If we wanted to keep playing with this, we could. You could right click and save that as an image and use it in the presentation somewhere. You can also at a glance see some things like this right here seems to be the largest blue node. I wonder what that might be. Oh my gosh, it's Maria Edgeworth. Look at that. Apparently she's referenced a lot in all of these letters. We can also see that this letter here, it's the largest sort of node. And what that tells us is that there's probably of the letters that Alex transcribed, this one probably took the longest because it's got a whole lot of entities associated with it. Okay, 32 entities, in fact. So if we wanted to see this on the Melt website, I think you can do it like this.
Or you could do slash letters and then that's it.
All right, so I'm just going to open a letter. here is one. This is not the one we want. I'm just gonna replace this little bit of URL with the identifier for that particular letter, hit enter. Okay. So we can see that this was indeed transcribed by Alex Legrand, and that if you scroll through here, you will find something like 30 some odd entities encoded. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I have in terms of like programmed content. It is 9:35. I think this segment is supposed to last another 10 minutes max. So we have time for about 10 minutes worth of questions. Or less if y'all are like done. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say, here are my business cards. Here are some Corpora stickers. Unfortunately, I have to head out right after this presentation. Sorry about that. But please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you are interested in Corpora and want to talk more. All right, questions? Yes.
I mean, first of all, thank you so much for everything you've done for MILF and everything you continue to do. This Corpora is wonderful. We love it. I just had a question, and this is such an awesome demonstration. You should keep those transcriber entities. I think.
Yeah, it's very
Because
cool.
that's really cool, especially so Alex can, at the very least, screenshot it and put it on her CD. But I wanted to ask you, now that you have, and I know you've developed recently a GitHub repository and have all this excellent documentation for projects using Corpora in the future, like maybe not centered at Texas A&M. What sort of person, like, what would a project elsewhere need to do to get going with Corpora?
Yeah, so eventually my goal would be like for somebody to be able to go to a place like DigitalOcean or someplace in the cloud, click a few buttons and have their own instance. Unfortunately, like I have a lot of projects to support.
Right.
I think this coming semester we've got like 15. I don't always have time to make it super easy for other people to use. So unfortunately, it would probably take someone in an IT department who knows how to deploy like Docker containers. However, okay, if that person is not super fluent with how to deploy, actually I have the link here, something like this. I have, wait, where is it? Second slide. There is in the documentation a section on deploying. It talks about, what's actually involved in terms of, what's running behind the scenes, gives you prerequisites in terms of the operating system. Here are instructions for how to run it locally on your own laptop if you want to, which is what I do all day long. Like that's how I get my work done. But if you want, if one of your IT people wants to install it on a Linux server, which I recommend, there are also detailed instructions here. Now, I can't always guarantee my time as being available because, again, the whole reason I built this tool is that I stay really busy. But I'm happy to respond to emails when I can. If your local institution has a team that is really needs to get this up and needs consultation, reach out and I'll see what I can do, right? I would love to help however I can. Yes.
Thank you. First of all, this is a really amazing work.
Thank you.
For one, that you are doing this by yourself, I couldn't imagine how much work it is. I'm currently in a position like probably 10 years ago you, and as you solo developer for the solo developer for the project.
Yeah.
We wanted to have something similar. I don't know if you've heard about Omeka. Like our website are based on Omeka.
Yeah.
Omeka provides the database as well, and then all the government course. So my first question will be, how do you compare this Corpora with the database provided by Omeka? Or as the position of us, do you suggest us to have a separate database rather than rely on the database that already provided to us?
Okay, so I said something earlier about the simplicity of your stack being a good way to go for a project. Now, Omeka is a tool with a long history of development and support. There's an institution behind it. It is used in the, I think mostly in the GLAM sector, right? Because it is about like displaying images and artifacts. It's kind of like built for galleries, right? It runs on PHP. It uses a MySQL database, right? And there are plugins and things. There are ways to add like custom fields and stuff like that, right? So there's no reason why you couldn't use Omeka. And if you are thinking about like the security and long-term sustainability of your project, right? You always have to think twice before using a tool that's developed by a single person, right? That's you know running in one institution so far. Okay, so that would be a serious like thing to think through. I will say though, if you are planning to scale, so if you're thinking of something like millions or tens of thousands of records instead of just a few thousand. The ability that Omeka has to add custom fields is essentially adding columns to a table in MySQL. And if you need to sort or filter or do certain things with those fields, and again, you have this scale issue, I'm not sure that Omeka does things like create indexes for you that sort of have that affordance. So you could end up scaling up, trying to kind of filter by something, sort by something, and having to wait while the MySQL database goes through millions of records, right? So part of the DNA of this tool was to support projects like the Advanced Research Consortium, which has like over 3 million bibliographic metadata records. There was an OCR project with 46 million like page images. So I needed to think through how to scale DH projects that iterate and evolve. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, right, then maybe considering something like this. And I am not in any way discouraging anybody from experimenting with Corpora at your own institution. That would make me very happy if we could get more developers interested in contributing toward this project. It would help me sleep at night, right? Because there are big projects that rely on Corpora. But again, you really need to think through the long-term sustainability of your project. And if it's happy right now on Omeka, I would say, think really hard before leaving behind a platform that's as widely supported as Omeka. Okay. That would be my advice. But if you're interested in exploring and playing, I'm happy to talk. Yeah.
Thank you. Can we use Corpora for like options in other languages?
Yeah. So you can do all kinds of things with Corpora. So here is, for instance, the Texas Art Project, which is just trying to catalog art by local Texas artists. And it has sort of affordances to use IIIF and create kind of metadata surrounding that. There's a public-facing website called texasartproject.org that draws from that data. We have a team from Nautical Archaeology that is taking a stack of index cards developed by a lexicographer over his entire lifespan, and they're using this to catalog all the different languages, all the different kind of terms in all those different languages, and all the main entries in something like a lexicon for nautical terms across the world. And this is something that I was able to support by putting in maybe just a few hours of work in terms of like setting it up. We keep track of our own coder project support data. There's Alex Legrand's wonderful project, Points Like a Man. is, so my point, I guess, is that it's built to be very flexible and you can use it for almost any kind of project. In order for Coder to support your project and host it on our instance of Corpora, you will need to be a local TAMU faculty or grad student, or staff, I guess. And you would need to go to our website and kind of join our mailing list and let us know. We have this kind of technical assistance award might be a good place to start. Where basically, you fill out a form, we sit down and talk to you about your project, and our board kind of decides whether or not to allocate our time. And so far we have, I don't know, I mean, this semester, for instance, I don't think we turned anybody down. So we want to support as many projects as we can, as we have time. So if you have a project and you're here on campus, please go through this process and let us help you.
I can't let you go without echoing Hillary's profound thanks, Brian, for all the work you've done on this. What's your favorite drink? I'll send you a case of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a bourbon guy.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. I live close to Kentucky.
Yeah.
I've also wanted to say, in the names thing, you began talking about the distinction between MELP and CLO. Just for future reference to that, one of the reasons that's so is that in the 1960s, the editors decided to create this relationship they have with the Oxford Dictionary, the National Biography,
Yeah.
because the DNB was founded by Leslie Stephen, and it was really based upon a kind of Carlylean model of history as innumerable biographies.
Yeah.
And so that kind of connection led them to do that. So all of the biographical notes contain those names, and the ones that are in the ODNB are connected to that.
Gotcha.
With you hit a paywall if you don't have the thing. But
Yeah.
that's a really interesting distinction
Yeah.
to make.
Yeah, and again, like I know that your TEI encoding is actually a lot more rich than what's represented in Corpora, right? So like not everything that you have spent time editing and encoding like always shows up in the database, right? But yeah, and projects, like I said, evolve differently, along different trajectories with different affordances, and that's just how it is. I think I'm over time. Thank you all so very much.